So I guess, as you know, it's a what's more likely Friday. Who's more likely to be back in Buffalo next year, Joe Brady or Keon Coleman? Tom.
Keon Coleman, through no fault, really, well, I guess his fault because of various things and, not showing up on time for meetings, dropping footballs in the end zone. He kind of did put himself in that position, but fairly rare for the owner to jump in and let everyone know exactly who was at fault for a pick that to this point, doesn't look like it's worked out very well. There were a lot of different things in that press conference. And any of
You
us
think? You think,
who have
Tom?
spent
You
any
think?
of us who have spent any amount of time though around Terry Pagula, no, he doesn't speak publicly often,
Right.
but when he does, there is no filter. You don't quite know what he's going to say. He is extremely blunt and honest, and you got a lot of honesty through the
Mhm.
course of that press conference, whether it was about Keon Coleman, whether it was about him defending Brandon Beane. Somebody in the crowd asked Beane about various things in terms of the idea that he ran a power play. And Terry said something that maybe shed a little bit of light on things behind the scenes, which is if you're running a power play, you're out. I'm not saying Sean McDermott ran a power play, but certainly McDermott had voiced his concerns and frustration with what he perceived to be not having enough talent on the roster. Obviously, Pagula so strongly disagreed with that not only did he fire Sean McDermott, he promoted Brandon Beane, who now is going to be over the top of the new head coach rather than both reporting to the owner. And Beane, along with Terry Pagula, along with Josh Allen, who they made abundantly clear in that press conference is going to be sitting in on everything here. They are now running a unique coaching search that, depending who you ask, this might be the best job of all 10 that we are filling in this offseason cycle.
Yeah, despite the bluntness or the emotions that we saw spilled out by Terry Pagula in that conversation, he did hold on to a coach for 9 years, and he does have Josh Allen, and that is something that I think a lot of people would love, along with the fan base and the new stadium and lots of reason to be excited otherwise in Western New York. Is Philip Rivers really in line? Like, I know we were talking about him as a possible coaching candidate down the line, and he did say in front of his locker before going back to Alabama prep school, coach, that absolutely he thinks he could coach in the NFL. Is this real, Tom?
Well, let's go back for a second here, just in terms of the parallels. And I'm not going to bring up Jeff Saturday because nobody wants to be put in that sentence in terms of how that worked out when he came back for the Colts. But you remember several years ago, Josh McCown was coaching high school football. All of a sudden, the Houston Texans brought him in and interviewed him for the head coaching job. There was a feeling, there were some people in the organization at that time who wanted to hire Josh McCown as the head coach immediately because he had all the traits, because he had played, close to 20 years in the league, because he had some experience, even if it was at the high school level, had been in that seat. Philip Rivers, certainly, a Hall of Fame caliber player. He's a better player than Josh McCown. The question is he a stronger coaching candidate based upon the credentials that he would bring into the building? If you're looking at somebody who's going to bring energy and leadership, certainly, Philip Rivers, by virtue of him, playing a football game after 3 practices at age 44, looking like he had not passed on dessert a whole lot during his 4+ years outside of the league. If he can come back and do that with his brain, what could he do if he's out there just calling plays for a quarterback? There's a lot of other things that go into that head coaching job. I know in the NBA, it's more common for, former players just to step right in. It's a much more complicated job, frankly, to come into the NFL. Not impossible. They're interviewing him for a reason. Maybe like Josh McCown, it could end up being, all right, he's not ready to be the head coach now, but can we convince him to come in and be the quarterback's coach or even the offensive coordinator? I would tell you this. They're wide open in terms of this search. I know that people initially said, well, it's Joe Brady versus Brian Dable. Those guys both have interviewed for the job. Both are possibilities. I would say probably Joe Brady a little bit more strongly than Brian Dable at this time. But they want to go in with an open mind. This is something very open-minded to bring in Philip Rivers. They're doing these interviews down in Florida. He lives in Alabama. It's a short trip over. If nothing else, you're going to be entertained by a few hours in that room. But they didn't want to take a hard line of we've got to have an offensive coordinator be the guy that we're promoting. It can't just be, well, we need this specific profile. They don't want to be doing another search for another 9+ years. And the fact that Josh is in those meetings, they're very seriously going to take into account what he wants. He played against Philip Rivers. The two of them have a relationship. We'll see exactly how real this becomes. I would just tell you, Rich, I don't get the sense that, you're going to wake up tomorrow and Phillip Rivers is the new head coach of the Bills. I believe they are going to be patient through this process. They quite likely are going to do some additional interviews next week. But because of the rules, anybody who wins their games this weekend, they can't talk to next week. They have to have the coaches, those teams, lose in order to talk to them because they didn't do an initial round back while Sean McDermott still had a job because they were in the playoffs.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.